To hear that there's a chance that you might lose your uterus is unnerving, to say the least. The first indication that I had fibroids was fatigue. I got to a point where I was always tired, and I found myself always sleeping and not feeling rested. And so while I had other symptoms before then, that was the main indicator to me that something was wrong. You need to figure out what it is.
What led me to the doctor was the ER, but I'll go back. About 8 months before I ended up in the ER and then with my new doctor, I was having super heavy cycles. I couldn't even function when my cycle was on. I've always had very heavy and sometimes painful periods, but I could normally take like an ibuprofen and be cool.
I've always been anemic, and I just attributed that to genetics and my environment. And it wasn't until late 20s when I felt like my anemia was impacting my quality of life.
I found out later that I was very anemic, to a point where as it started to get worse and started to progress, I was always cold and could never ever get warm.
I go to the doctor and I'm like, hey, it's time for my pap smear, but I have these questions because my body is doing things that are even abnormal for me. And I'm a person with a heavier cycle. And so I told him what was going on. He was like, oh, okay, no problem. I'm just gonna give you some birth control and you should be good. I've heard people that take birth control that feel better in a couple of months. I was like, okay, so that's gonna be my story.
My period started to get very heavy. Definitely a big indicator, I think, for a woman anytime your menstrual cycle changes.
First, I tried to manage the symptoms in terms of my anemia. Then I realized that I was losing weight. I'm a small person to begin with, and when I got down to 105 pounds, I wondered if it was stress, but then I said, wait a second, what's happening? So I went to my OB-GYN again, and I realized that I'd lost so much blood because of my heavy periods. And then he ordered immediately a blood transfusion. So I was a bit nervous about a blood transfusion, so I said, well, what are my options? And then he recommended iron infusions, and that was a way to build my iron up.
When I can think back to maybe there was the first change in my cycle was about 2 years before I actually had my surgery to have them removed. But again, at that time, I didn't recognize any. That was probably, when I think back, the very first, could have been the earliest symptom. The one thing about fibroids is that they don't know how fast they grow. They progress differently in every single person.
Every cycle, I'm still having the same exact period. Not only is it the same for a few months, it starts to get worse. The bleeding's heavier, the periods are lasting longer, the pain is worse. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just the wrong birth control. But honestly, I didn't even feel like going back to the doctor, so I just kind of ran with it until I landed in the ER.
Over the course of a year, I did every other week iron infusions, and we checked it after a while, and it was still low. He said, you may want to consider options to getting your fibroids removed. And I was really nervous because I didn't want to go do any kind of invasive surgery. So there was a procedure that I opted for initially, which was MyoSure. It was an outpatient experience, so no downtime, was able to go back to work in like 2 days.
My doctor, as soon as she went to examine me, she was able to feel the fibroids, and she was able to feel that they were pretty sizable. We initially didn't want to have surgery. Doctors try to avoid that if they don't need to, but my symptoms progressed so much that not only did I end up having to have surgery, we moved it up.
The day before I went to the ER, I was taking a shower. And then next thing I know, I'm like blacking out. The next day I got up and went into work, and I was still in all this pain, but I'm like, I've been doing this since I've had a period. I'm not gonna not go to work because of my period. So I'm sitting at my desk, and next thing I know, I get this pain was so severe. I go to the bathroom, and as a person with a heavy cycle, to say that I was completely freaked out when I went to the restroom, I was like, OMG, am I hemorrhaging? I call the advice nurse, and I'm telling her what my symptoms are, and she's like, you need to go to the ER. You can't even wait for a next day appointment. You need to go.
And I was like, okay, cool. So let's see how this cycle, what my next cycle will tell me. And after that, it just got worse, to the point where I was filling a maxi pad, like an overnight pad, in an hour. I was extremely insecure about just being anywhere public during that time. I just did this procedure. Why is it even worse than it was before. And so that was the point where I decided, with consultation from the doctor and my family, that I needed to get a myomectomy.
When she confirmed I had them, I mean, that was a relief in a way to know that that's what was wrong. What did kind of hit me and what got me the most nervous and scared about them was when we talked about having surgery. And anytime they tell you you have to have surgery, there are risks associated with it. They're going to do surgery to remove some things inside and outside your uterus. There's always a risk that you could lose it. I cried about it, I thought about it, I overthought it. I realized I still had to do it in order to at least attempt to keep, a healthy uterus, so hopefully be able to have children later.
I go to the ER and I'm signing in and they're asking me what my symptoms are. And again, I'm still feeling like a complete idiot because I'm like, here I am telling these nurses that I'm coming to the ER for my period. I almost felt like I was being judged. I probably wasn't. It was probably all in my head, but I felt like it. And the doctor comes in and they take my blood count and he's like, you've lost almost enough blood to warrant a blood transfusion.
I had to build up my iron to get the myomectomy, so a series of months again doing the iron infusions. December 15th of 2011 was when I had my myomectomy surgery.
Come to find out, the doctor that I went to see about the symptoms 8 months earlier that gave me the birth control, he didn't tell me I was anemic. So I'm severely anemic at that point, and then this happens, and of course that takes my blood levels all the way down.
Fast forward, had my myomectomy, great, got married, and of course we want to start a family, and the first thing I did when I went to my doctor was check to see if I had fibroids, and lo and behold, they came back.
I think having all of the symptoms before, I was able to recognize certain things that were happening to my body that made me feel like they were back. I only found out this past June for sure that they were. It's pretty common. I believe it's at least, there's a 50% chance that they can recur.
We have not discussed any non-surgical options. It's really comes down to like which type of surgery I'll need. And to be honest, even if she were able to put me on a different birth control or, do something like that, honestly, I want this fibroid out. To say that the last year and a half has been awful, like that's an understatement.
A few years ago, I'd gone through a procedure and in less than 3 years, they came back. I was really nervous when we were thinking about conceiving what would happen. And fortunately for us, we were able to conceive and the fibroids and the fetus coexisted.
Fibroids themselves are fairly common. Most people just don't know that they have them. A lot of people go through life with them and just don't really have symptoms at all. And that's why they don't know a lot about it. It's not until people have symptoms till they come in and we find out that something is wrong with them.
In all my research that I've done on fibroids, I found out that it affects African American women more prominently than any other race. And as I think about my friends, I can count probably over a dozen of my friends who've either had a myomectomy, fibroids, or something of that nature. And it's a bit disheartening because you just think about something that's prevalent. It's just like you have the myomectomy, you have these other procedures, but they grow back. So it's like, why are they growing back?
We do so much. We have to come to work and succeed. We have to be fly outside of work. We have babies. We take care of homes. But the thing that we don't always do is take care of ourselves. Put your health first. If there is something wrong and you haven't been to the doctor or you're afraid to go because you don't have insurance, look into other options. And for women who do have the insurance but don't make the time, girl, make the time. Because at the end of the day, you only get one body. And if you're not taking care of that one body, then what?
I have two lessons. One is about just really doing your own research. Once you are able to do that and understand what's happening, you are a better patient because you know what questions to ask your doctor and can advocate on behalf of yourself. The second thing I learned, I think perhaps the most important, was that sharing is caring. And so the idea of me sharing this with my friends and family members and not keeping it to myself offered me the opportunity to gain much more knowledge than I initially had.